Thank you, Presiding Officer. There has been, of course, significant attention on the management of transgender prisoners over the course of the last week, and I'd like to take this opportunity to update Parliament on what we have done and what we will be doing. Before doing so, I'd want to acknowledge the victims in these cases. We should never forget the victims of crime. I'm sure that's true of everybody in this chamber, and in that regard I was very impressed by the comments made by our contributor at Time for Reflection, who said that we should focus on what really matters and recognise the unique worth of each individual. I'm very conscious of the importance of maintaining public confidence in the justice system, and for that reason I'm keen that discussion around this issue is as calm and founded on fact as possible. The things that we say in here have real impacts on people, and in the context of the criminal justice system, these are often very vulnerable people. We must not allow the legitimate questions that are being asked to fuel the view that trans women somehow pose an inherent threat to women when that is not the case. What is important is the crime that they have committed and the risk that they pose to other prisoners, to staff and indeed themselves. We have said this before, and I'll say it again. We are talking about a very small number of people. Transgender people in the prison estate account today for roughly 0.27 of the entire prison population. That equates to around 20 people out of 7,367 prisoners. It changes, obviously, on a regular basis. And as of today, we have around 17 trans women, the majority of whom are kept in the male estate. Of course, in addition to that, on Sunday, it was announced by the Scottish Prison Service they are doing a further deep dive into those circumstances. By its very nature, the prison population as a whole has a significant number of people of all genders that represent a risk to others, and we must recognise and commend the professionalism and the very real expertise of the prison service in managing those complex, high-profile and challenging individuals within their care and in keeping others safe. The existing SPS process applies equally to the arrangements within which the SPS make decisions about transgender prisoners. Their gender identity and gender reassignment policy, adopted in 2014 in dialogue with the relevant stakeholders, including criminal justice and equalities organisations, envisaged as a general rule seeing individuals being admitted to prisons that accord to their gender identity and subject to an individualised risk assessment. This has not changed recently, nor has it been impacted by the recent Gender Recognition Reform Bill passed by this Parliament. Just to repeat that, this has not changed recently, nor has it been impacted by the recent Gender Recognition Reform Bill passed by this Parliament. In terms of the policy in Scotland, there is no automatic right for trans women to serve a sentence in a female prison, or indeed for a trans man to be in the male estate. The prison service retains the ability to place people in a prison which may not correspond to their identified gender. Instead, they make these decisions based on a rigorous and robust individualised risk assessment, taking account of all relevant factors, including the safety of the individual and of other prisoners and of staff. No transgender prisoner will be placed in the general population, either male or female, without that risk assessment. It is a long-standing position of the Scottish Government and the SPS that we do not comment on individual cases. This is, however, very challenging to sustain when there is substantial public debate and concern around a particular case. And with this in mind, and in the context of everything that has already been said around two cases that were reported in the media last week, I need to make the following points. At the time that either of these cases were brought to the public attention, SPS had not taken a decision about the future placement of the individuals concerned. The process of considering these cases was still underway. I should also offer reassurance that during the period of risk assessment of the prisoner convicted of rape that had been admitted to HMP Cornton Vale, the individual was segregated from the rest of the prison community. This was done in accordance with the Prison Service's established policy and practice. While the assessment was in progress, the decision was taken by the SPS that the individual should be transferred to the male estate. SPS was, of course, aware of Ministers' views. It would be, frankly, bizarre if they were not aware of Ministers' views. But it remained an operational decision for the SPS based on the information available to it. I should also make clear, given this issue has been raised, that the decision to initially accommodate this prisoner in HMP Cornton Vale while the risk assessment was done was made without ministerial involvement, nor indeed awareness, and in line with existing procedures. The other individual identified in the media was in and remains in the male estate. and neither of the cases that have been highlighted arose from any change to Scottish Government legislation or policy, or any change to the SPS's risk assessment procedure that has operated in recent years. They arose from the specific circumstances of each case, and we have acknowledged fully the concerns that have been raised in respect of these cases, and we have responded swiftly. Given the public concern around these cases, it is right that SPS has acted to bring absolute clarity to the position, and on Sunday I released a statement confirming that measures that will be taken pending the outcomes of 2 reviews. The first of these is SPS's current policy review of the management of trans prisoners, which has been undertaken in dialogue with the Scottish Government and other stakeholders. A consultation exercise was undertaken during 2022 with interested parties, including women and other prisoners and staff. The draft revised policy will be independently assessed by experts in women affected by trauma and violence. The review is expected to be completed in the coming months, and we will ensure that Parliament is kept informed, given the strong interest there is in this issue. SPS are also now undertaking an urgent lesson learned review in relation to the case of Isla Bryson, with any learning to be applied immediately to existing transgender cases in the prison estate and any coming into custody. That review will report to the SPS Chief Executive at the end of this week, and I will write to the Criminal Justice Committee to update on the outcome of this next week. The timescales for any subsequent action will depend on the findings. Until these reviews are complete, no transgender person already in custody with any history of violence against women, including sexual offences against women, will be moved from the male to the female estate. In addition, no newly convicted or remanded transgender prisoner with any history of violence against women will be placed in the female estate. For clarity, this definition includes any history of violence, including sexual offences. It's felt that following through with robust risk assessment and taking account of all relevant factors, there are still exceptional circumstances in particular cases that will require the approval of ministers. This is not dissimilar to the situation which was announced last week in England and Wales. The Prison Service will seek ministerial approval for these particular cases, which will not change the general position that decisions on the management and accommodation of prisoners within the prison estate have been and will continue to be operational matters for the Scottish Prison Service. This is in keeping with the delegated authority under which the Prison Service operates and in line with the public interest in this matter. These arrangements will allow for exceptional circumstances to be considered and agreed whilst the reviews are in progress. It is right that the actions that we have taken will continue to ensure that we respect and protect the rights of trans individuals wherever they are in society, including within our prisons, and that we continue to consider and protect the safety of all prisoners and staff. In conclusion, the actions that I have announced on which the SPS are progressing aim to provide immediate assurance in the context of the public concern raised by the 2 recent cases. The outcome of the reviews being in progress will ensure that any immediate lessons are learned from the issues that have been identified by these cases, and that the wider review of the Prison Service's current policy on the management of trans prisoners and the subsequent application of this policy take account of relevant factors, including input from experts in women affected by trauma and violence. Ultimately, it is vital that future decisions about the location and management of prisoners continue to be based on thorough risk assessment, drawing on the expertise and input of relevant professionals, with the priority of ensuring that all individuals that work in our prisons and that people in the care of our prison staff are kept safe. This has always been and will always be the absolute focus of the Scottish Prison Service.